Welcome to Dominate Your Day. Today, I have a visionary leader and entrepreneur, Leigh Burgess. She has inspired thousands of women and has been a catalyst for empowering change in their lives. I guess, in the next 6 weeks, she's launching a book called Be Bold Today. By the time this podcast comes out, you will have the book already available. So I'd like to welcome Leigh Burgess to Dominate Your Day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. So Leigh and I got to talk in the green room, and I can't wait for her to share her story with you guys because she's one of those people that was literally in the grind she was at Dartmouth and then at Duke and doing some fabulous things, but
Mhm.
realized something was missing. And she did something about it. So Leigh, tell the audience how your journey from being in the kind of corporate or I guess that would be nonprofit world of education into being a consultant and a author today.
Yeah. So definitely still corporate. I think in academic medicine is definitely a corporate environment. And I think for me, really great experiences, so much learning. You learn a lot from things that work and things that don't work. But I think for me, where I came to a halt in 2020 was I just was burnt out. I had run really hard at both institutions and done extraordinary work along with my team, but I think I had, at that point paid the cost. And again, what a crazy time of the year for the world in 2020. So this was even pre-vaccine, kind of smack dab in the middle of it. And I think that maybe sped up some of the things that were happening because that was an easy 17-hour day for me of working and not much movement outside of that. So I was not in a good shape, on every level of health that you can talk of and speak of. And for me, I just really felt something had to give and I couldn't figure it out. I kept doing the same things that I always did to fix it, which was work harder, take more responsibility, try to, in air quotes for everyone, control, the
Mhm.
situation as much as I could. And it just was not working. And after really thinking through with my family, it was I needed to make a change. And so I chose myself, and which felt very selfish. I'll just say that just as a woman, it felt selfish to make this decision, but I was supported, but it still felt like I was letting someone down or I hadn't done enough or I didn't try hard enough or I wasn't smart enough to figure it out. So you got to get over that. At least I did. And so made the change. But what was so interesting is, I was able to start opening up different parts of possibility, in not only my life, but I think even my brain started working a little different of what I could do and what I could be and how I could create this part of my career. And I was 48 at the time. So I gave my notice, and by the time that I, left on my last day, a month later, I had already incorporated. I had started thinking about the business model, but I still was unsure if I would stay in healthcare because I just was so burnt out on what I'd been doing. Really good at my job, but just wasn't not sure it was going to bring me joy and feel aligned. So had some time really to heal, which I think is really important when you're in burnout, is to take time to understand, to notice. And that's where I created the bold framework actually, because I'm someone who likes to follow a plan or a process, and I wanted to understand kind of how do I do this? How do I figure out what's next? And so I created the bold framework, which it's an acronym: believe, own, learn, design. And I really leaned heavy into the beliefs that I had about myself, the belief of what was possible, my mindset around finances and opportunity, and then started to create the possibilities of a funnel for being an entrepreneur, which I had never ever thought of before. I thought that was very unstable. I thought it was something that only like very wealthy people do because they can afford to take that risk. It just was not something I was raised that was possible. My parents were very like, have a 401k, have insurance and all that. And guess what? You can have that as an entrepreneur too. So it was a new kind of way to think about possibility. And took some months to do that. And I kicked off with a very short runway of January 21 to May of 21 was my runway, and used savings and some of my retirement to really, make it through those bootstrap months, and then really once I had my first client the last week of April of 21. And by the middle of summer, I had 7 clients. So, and it just kind of flew from there with the goal of only just making what I made and being able to support my family and feel much more aligned in my life.
And look at you now. So I want to take a minute and think about what you just shared with us, because that was a big journey. When you
Yeah.
were working at Dartmouth and at Duke, what was your role in healthcare and as a leader? What were
Sure.
you
Yeah,
doing?
so I actually at Duke, I had started as a project manager and worked my way up, and it was the chief research operations officer. So I ran all the admin ops there. So a great place for me to be, innovative agitator, certainly at a pace and a space that really wants to move fast and have the highest levels of quality possible. So I worked my way from a project manager to a chief. So a very short period of time, I was leading and a very large team, had large responsibilities. Obviously, that particular group in cancer research is one of obviously the most important in my biased opinion,
Mhm.
because you have to move fast, and it's really what gives people hope if they're diagnosed with cancer. So I took that very seriously,
Mm.
with a sense of urgency and agility and levels of getting it done. And then came to Dartmouth with an incredible opportunity to be able to help them with their research organization, kind of add new innovative pieces and parts to it and reset it in different spaces and places, and just ran really hard and took a lot of responsibility for what I was doing. And then, the pandemic hit and kind of just, like I said, I think it really exacerbated, I think, things that were maybe a little loose or were coming off, like the yellow lights on the dashboard, it kind of moved to orange, I think, and then to red very quickly.
When you took, we talked about this in the green room, that you had your team go through strengths. And I
Hmm.
think it was at
At
Duke
Dartmouth.
or
At
Dartmouth.
Dartmouth. Hmm.
And then you took your strengths again as an entrepreneur. What
Right.
did you find was different in those top 5?
It was fascinating for me. I really do believe in the Clifton strengths. What I like about it is, as a leader, you have a lot of personality tests or leadership
Mm,
assessments that you take. And, I've taken the disc, I think 3 times in my career at least, the
mhm,
MBTI. And, StrengthsFinder was very, like, for me, just a breath of fresh air, another way to
mhm,
look at what we do and to focus in on that. And a big follower of Marcus Buckingham for a long time. But I think what I noticed is, when I took it in 19 in the corporate environment versus 21 when I was, I'd say, literally a year later. So they're a year apart. And 21 was obviously a year into my business. The only one that flew or came through was Achiever, but in a different order. And I think what's interesting about going through them is that things that I think are necessary sometimes in the corporate environment, and I'm not dissing it or saying anything negative about it, but there are certain things that you need to do that you're responsible for, that you
mhm,
can't like shake up the sand jar all the time. And like it is, you kind of need to do certain things in your roles and leadership and leading large teams that you would not do most likely as an entrepreneur, right? So meaning that as an entrepreneur you might have more ability to have freedom of thought or innovation, or one that sticks out for me is ideation. So
mm.
ideation wasn't even in my top 5. I'm trying to see, even it was number 30 when I
Wow.
was in the corporate environment, and it's number 4 as an entrepreneur. Yeah, so I love that one because it wasn't that I wasn't innovative in the corporate environment, but it was definitely a more structured environment. And certainly clinical research is like it's a very black and white rule book. And
Mhm.
so there's not, you don't just riff on something in that space. So I think it was just really interesting for me to see some of the things. And strategic was number 1 now as a entrepreneur, and I consider myself a very strategic person, but in the corporate environment, it was number 14.
Yeah.
So I think it was just really interesting for me to see kind of where things shifted and kind of who hung around and kind of who dropped down,
Mm.
in the certain spaces. Harmony was a fun one. I had mentioned it to you. So in my environment, it was number 6. So in the top 10, but it was right there, almost in the top 5 in the corporate environment. And Harmony on the entrepreneur side, it's number 33. So
Yeah.
out of 34. So meaning I'm not so worried about upsetting or over innovating or overwhelming, like because I can be, I think, in my straightforwardness and how I move pretty fast and I think out loud, that can be overwhelming. And so I think now I feel a lot more aligned to who I am and working with, large groups of people and individuals who see that as a strength. And I think I don't have to kind of adjust or kind of align so much as I probably did in the corporate environment, which is, again, is expected. It's not a negative. It's just kind of sometimes
Mhm.
how you operate at the highest levels in those environments.
What do you feel this is, and it's interesting because I don't see people shift as much as you have.
Yeah.
So usually what we'll say, okay, if you take it again, it's going to probably shift around in that top 10, but it seems like yours have really pulled from 30 all the way in.
Yeah.
So my question is, do you feel like there were things suppressed from a long time ago that you had as a child or in high school or college develop and you had suppressed them in order to do those other things and now they're just coming out and you're getting to use them? Or do you think like the ideation, for
Yeah, it's
example?
definitely a possibility, and I don't know if it was suppressed, but it wasn't
Or
as welcomed or
yeah,
necessary, most
yeah,
likely, right? So
yeah.
ideation, maybe if I was in marketing or in some of those other spaces in corporate, like there much would have been a higher need for ideation. But being like in a very clinical area, there is no ideating other than innovating, obviously, in research, which is kind of the best place for me to be in such a structured place. So what's interesting about where I was the perfect space to be in research and innovation, but there still is a high amount of structure and expectation for safety and health and wellness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but as an entrepreneur, it was just so interesting how many, like when I said my brain started working differently, I felt like I could think. I felt like things lit up that had maybe been suppressed or not allowed to be turned on
Yeah.
because it wasn't necessary. I was using energy in other areas, right?
Yes.
So I felt like this sense of when I made the decision to leave and when that was all happening, the sense of fear. It was like I
Mhm.
was. I it is not something. I don't think being bold is being fearless for me. My definition. It's like stepping through it and acting in spite of something that is meant to keep you safe. So, but it's like, is this a fear I should listen to, or is this a fear that may be limiting me? And so for me, it was like I need to move through it. But fear and freedom kind of were partners for me in this journey as I started off.
Mhm.
And I just had this unbelievable sense of freedom to be anything I wanted to be and to think differently. And I had a whole host of ideas, some of them extremely like funny at this point to me, but it was just like whatever I had, it was a good idea and I was going to put it up there. It was going to at least get on a sticky note. It wasn't just going to get, "Oh, that's really silly." And like one of them was like a beer and barbecue sauce creation. Like I had four different or five different businesses. One of them was an interior designer, and something I just took the things I really liked or had joy
Mhm.
in. We loved being outside and grilling and listening to music, and so we were going to design these sauces made by local breweries in combination with organic ingredients and name them after cool songs.
Oh,
So
cool.
we
Love
didn't do
that.
that. Yeah, we didn't do that. But I
You
mean,
might
that was, yeah,
know.
we just let the ideas flow. And so I think, that was definitely, just very, very different from kind of how I was operating previously.
Yeah. Well, and this is the feeling that you're describing is that flow feeling of
Mhm.
you can just work for hours and not be tired because you're in this new energy.
Yep.
And when you're in your strengths, not about managing your time, it's about managing your energy.
Mhm.
So we know when people are using and I think it's and I've been on this journey with other women who are discovering their true authentic selves and feeling like they've kind of had to be a certain way at work and be a
Mhm.
certain way. And this is kind of unleashing you to be you
Mhm.
authentically and create this business. And now you've got a book coming out. You've done these retreats, six retreats,
Mhm.
and you've also got a really cool networking group that you're doing. So I want you to
Correct.
talk about that. But look at all of the fruit that is coming out from these seeds of you saying, I'm burnout. I'm not doing right now what I need to be doing. I need to take a moment.
Yeah. Just a moment. Yeah.
Just a moment. That's not like it was too long of a moment. to get yourself, but I can see, what do you think you used in your journey from when you made the decision till you launched? What of those strengths do you feel like really played out for you as things were starting to happen? I can imagine, uh, two of them you've already talked about, but what do you think was happening? What do you think was
Yeah, we already talked about ideation and strategic, so obviously those are good, but I think self-assurance and belief was number 6 for me, and I think self-assurance and belief were really, really important for me to take those steps, to believe in myself when you may have people who believe more in you than you do in yourself. And that's what I found out. And I think for me, the person I was most worried to tell was my mom that I had, that I was quitting and resigning because I didn't want her to worry. And I think and we talked about this in the green room, but I think, for me, a lot of my life, I felt like I wasn't enough. And I could
mm,
never figure out why I thought that because I'm very, on
successful?
paper and what I do, like very, I've achieved a lot. I have 3 master's degrees. I have, 2 bachelors. I have, I'm working on my doctorate. So like in the sense of that's not it. Like
Mm,
cuz that's something people look at obviously in the corporate world. So like, and I have an incredible family and I've done the things that I, thought would equal success or equal this achievement for myself and it's never enough. And I think just this year I figured it out. I lost my brother when I was 6 and he was 11, and it was an accident. And I think what I started to do at age 6 unknowingly, which I then pulled through as a string
mhm.
into my life, is I started filling the gap or trying to fill the hole for my
Right.
parents initially so that they were never upset. So they never sad. So they were always happy, like, do the good thing, go ahead, like, get it done, like, do it at the highest level, get that 100%. Um, and I think for me, like, I've just kind of pulled that through. So I overused that as an adult, which I think obviously I think it ended me up in severe burnout because I was trying to fill the gap for everything and everyone, and
Mm,
that left nothing for me,
mm,
empty tank. And so filling that gap, I think, was something that definitely I've realized I don't need to do now. And I think there's a
mm.
myth of I think around I talk about 5 myths of boldness in the book, and one of them is it's a solo act, meaning you do it alone. You absolutely have to take intentional action. You are the only one that can do that and take those steps. The first step is the hardest, but you don't have to do it alone. It really is something that you can have a supportive network and connected, to people who want you to win and who aren't questioning kind of why you're doing what you're doing, but only want to see you be successful. So I think that's something that I definitely learned in that process as well around my strengths and how I use them.
Thank you for bringing that up. I think I heard a speaker last week, Jimmy Winship, and he's written a book called Fearless Living. And he
Mhm.
talks about going back into your childhood and figuring out that moment, just like you described.
Mhm.
When did you lose your original childhood identity? And what identity have you been carrying forward?
Yeah.
And really helping to kind of go, wait, I don't have to be that person. I was created to be this person way back when. And how
Yeah.
do I figure that out now? And that's the energy you're getting right now. And so, those of you listening who haven't, who feel like there's something you're holding back and you don't know why, it's good to do that deep work and take that time to figure out what that is, because then it's freeing, as you talked about,
Yeah.
the freedom and the fear of going forward and then taking those action steps. So, you also talked about, and I love that African proverb about go alone, don't go very far, but go
Mhm.
together, go further. And
Mhm.
that's what you're describing. This owning your own business is not, it's not a single, it is a sport. It's not
It's a
for,
group project. I mean, I had the honor for me, actually co-founding the company with my daughter. So she had just finished a graduate internship at that time and had the ability to come in. What a crazy time of the year for her as well. When you figure you're just kind of launching and then the world shuts down. And so actually co-founded Bold Industries Group with my daughter, who is 25 years younger than me. And so it's really to see kind of how the framework is used in different generations and how someone in their late 20s sees it versus someone in their early 50s. It's just been a learning for me, as well as just the strengthening of our relationship, how to communicate. Like, are you my mom right now, or are we partners? And so like that, we did that kind of at the beginning. And it was, something we worked through pretty quickly, but it was such an honor to do that and continue to do that too. So it's definitely not a solo act, but kind of that first step was, certainly I had to take it, and it was one I needed to take on my own.
And I love how your daughter, I love that reverse mentoring. So
Hmm.
you're mentoring
Yeah.
her and probably mentoring you,
Yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah, which is
100%. And she's so
so
skilled at things I'm not, and I think it's a lovely kind of connection there too, of like, I'm the big idea, like visionary, like kind of see it, 100, steps ahead. She's the details of everything. And I would not be able to do a quarter of what we do without her and her talent.
so I'm curious, you have belief in your talents, and
Mhm.
that is really about core values.
Mhm.
And your yes is your yes and your no is your no because values are really important to you.
Mhm.
How have you developed those into your business?
I think it's making sure that I'm aligned and getting energy from what I'm doing. Where in the past, you don't really have a choice sometimes. I think as much of a choice as you have an entrepreneur. And what I mean by that is, you have a specific job description, you're doing what you're doing. And I think most of the time, 80% of the time, I was doing things I really enjoyed and kind of stretched me and I learned. But there was the monotonous 20, or kind of like, I really hate meetings, or, do we have to do another X, Y, or Z, whatever it may be. But that still worked for me. But I think as I kind of got further and further into burnout, it became like a 50-50. Like I wasn't finding joy in the things I even used to find joy in, or what I was good at. And I think for me now, I get to spend a lot of time in those areas and be around people who also feed into me, and give me energy. And so I think that's one of the things I get to select. I think when you're first starting out, you're like, I'm going to work with everybody and I'm going to say yes to everybody. And every entrepreneur probably has said yes to something they should have said no to. You usually learn on the first one, right? At least I did. I pretty much, like, sometimes it'll take me a while to learn, but once I do, and it's pretty quick. And in the sense of how quickly I can pivot. And I think those are the types of things I'm able to do now more than ever than I was before.
So when you were starting this journey, who did you have around you? You had your daughter. Who else did you surround yourself to help you? Because I think we become the sum of those we hang out with
Yeah.
as we're trying to build something new. Who did you have mentors? Did you have other people that you went? I always tell people draw a circle and put people around your virtual table
Yeah.
of people that
Yeah.
have experiences that you need, and who was around your table that helped you as you grew and
Yeah.
started your business?
What was interesting is when I first made the move, so many people didn't understand it. And the
Mm,
people who would have normally been in that inner circle, meaning people who know my career or know how well I worked or how accomplished I was, were some of the people who didn't get it. And I think at first I was actually hurt. Like, it took it like, wow, we're not friends anymore. Like, they didn't understand, like, how could you leave? Like, what were you thinking? And this is such a wonderful place and so stable. And I think we've learned, like, just being in any role this time of the world, like, nothing is truly stable, right?
true.
So I think for me, I was surprised by, and I looked at, like, if you think of a bullseye, like, who's in the center. Because I originally, when I first made the decision, I told everybody my dream, or told everyone my ideas, and including my barbecue sauce idea. And people were like, "What? Are you
Yeah.
crazy?"
Everyone's
And I
like,
was like, "Oh, that
"Sure,
kind of, yeah,
okay."
that kind of hurt." Like, I was just like, it was just an idea. Let's not shoot it down. Like, let's just put it up there. And yeah, I'd love to make a logo for it and all that stuff. I get very creative. But I think what I realized was my inner circle became much smaller, and,
Mhm,
obviously, it was my family, so my daughter, and my husband are big parts, of our company, and then also my sister, has now joined. So I think very close to the vest of my family members, and obviously my parents and, brother, very supportive. But then I wanted to make sure I had a coach, and so I had a really, I think, one of a kind coach that understands health and wellness and mindset as much as it being an entrepreneur. And,
mhm.
I remember her saying entrepreneurished, meaning like you're nourishing yourself, but you're still doing your thing and you're getting your stuff done. And so that was a really, really important piece, of that journey, but also an investment, which was like, for me, a big investment, but I knew I needed to make an investment in myself to actually
Mhm.
get to that next level. So sometimes that can hold us back too, that financial mindset of, should I really spend that much on myself, or is that really going to do what I think it's going to do? And it's, obviously 100x'd my life, that decision.
That is so great. Okay, so you took a lot of bold steps and you created this framework called
Mhm.
BOLD, right?
Mhm.
So let's talk about that in the book in our
Okay.
last like 15 minutes because I'd
Okay.
love to hear how that all happened and how you created the framework as you were developing it for yourself.
Yeah. So I think everyone, well, a lot of people I know say, I want to write a book. And I think what I've been told is everyone has a story in them, but not everybody can write a book. And what I've learned is not everyone can write a good book. Um,
Yeah.
so, and I really, in 2020, I thought, here's the time. I have more time than ever to do these things, because I was kind of coming out of this space and having a little bit of time to get better and healthier. And, what a great time to do it. But I'm glad I didn't, because the book I don't think would be as deep and like connected to my experiences and my learnings over the last 4 years. So that framework really was built in 2020, and I have used it, and it has changed very little since then in the sense of kind of what it means and what it's about. And it's something you can go back and revisit, because I don't think you go through the framework and go, check, I'm good on my beliefs, I'm good on ownership, I always remember what I learn, and I'm designing my life every day. Like, if you're doing that, then awesome, but very rarely is that the case. So it is a place, like, you may just need to go back and dust off your beliefs and do a belief audit. Like, what's holding me back, or where am I getting stuck, or why am I not taking action on something I said I want to do? I mean, I hear a lot. I know what I need to do, but I'm not doing it. I was like, well, let's unpack that a little bit. Like,
Mhm.
why is that? And it's usually a couple layers down. It's not going to be right on the surface. For me, ownership was one thing I didn't do very well, was own my wins, own my successes. I owned every failure and everyone else's failure, most likely, and took responsibility for it. I had this mantle of responsibility that was just crazy. So for me, I had to really work on owning the good stuff as much as the things I needed to work on, and also give some stuff back to people that wasn't mine to own in the first place.
Let me ask you, did you have responsibility in your top 10 then?
I had, it was number 4
Well,
in
there we go.
in the corporate world. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where it landed on. It's number 7.
Okay.
For yeah.
I've
So
heard you mention the word responsibility a lot, and I'm like, wow, she's got it somewhere in that. Yeah.
yeah, I think I had this sense of, because of being in the clinical setting,
Yeah.
certainly I felt this sense of responsibility of like making sure we keep everyone safe and no one gets hurt, and that
Mhm.
we give them the highest level of care. And obviously, those institutions are known extraordinarily for doing incredible work and having the highest levels of care. So I didn't want to do anything other than, keep it at that high level or make it even better. And so I think I have that, so for me, like, it was on top of that. And then lurking in the background, which again, something I didn't realize until this year, was this filling the gap, like
Mm.
making sure nothing drops. And I think that was a little bit of my perfectionism coming out, which I didn't think I had either. Like, I didn't think I had any shadows. I didn't even know about, that I was a little bit of a perfectionist. And I didn't know I was filling the gaps so much in my life. Now, one may be looking at me could see it, but unless you know it yourself, it's really hard to change.
Right.
That self-awareness is like your golden ticket to like the next level of you. And so for me, it was like understanding the perfectionism pieces about myself too, and what I was owning and what I was expecting was a learning for me. So like going into the L of the framework and being in that growth mindset. I think I am a growth mindset person most of the time. I don't really get fixed, and but I do think we have those moments, and I think mine was really around perfectionism. And then I think also for me, a learning was in the entrepreneurial world, I felt imposter syndrome, which I had never felt in the corporate world. Like, I felt I'd belonged at the table. I didn't feel like I wasn't supposed to be there. I was extremely confident in the corporate setting. But as an entrepreneur, like, I'm like, oh, I'm a freshman, and I would say things like that. I was like, why am I saying that? How am I talking to me? And usually I would talk to me worse than I would ever talk to anybody else. So that was a learning for me. And then designing was really about getting an understanding of how I'm designed, my strengths, what I'm good at, what I shouldn't be around, where like I need support, and where, someone else can help and support us figuring this out, but I don't always have to have the answer. and then seeking alignment. So I think that's what I used, and it really helped pull through for me into each of the areas that we've created, whether it's the podcast or the retreats or the book itself. Obviously it's the center of the book, and in the book I really go through the myths around being bold, and there's five that I've come up with, and I've talked about one of them, but there's several others, like it's too late to be bold, or bold is always loud and big, and there's a whole continuum of boldness. I mean, there's very, very quiet, bold moments that we have. A lot of mine you don't know about. They're not on social media. They're going to be really between my ears, most likely, about me kind of working through things or figuring things out, and using what I've learned about myself to take me forward. And so it's really understanding that there's different ways to define being bold, which on the podcast, that's the one question I ask everyone is what's their definition. So we took all of those definitions and then we created these bold personas. So you kind of pick, you take a quiz, which everyone loves a quiz, at least a lot of us do. And
Mhm.
you take the quiz and it kind of gives you your persona. And again, really just kind of gets you in a frame of mind of where you kind of fit within the bold barometer, so to speak, because most people I feel are bold and are
Mhm.
making bold moves, and they just need to free their ability to think of the possibility, which is really what I hope the book does, is just help them see what's possible.
I love that. I also like that you've created a little test they can take for a persona because I think everybody does have a different view of what
Mhm.
bold means.
Yeah, it's personal.
Yeah, and so being able to bring that out. So do you have one story you want to share of somebody that's used your framework and how they've used it to help them, whether it's at work or like you beside yourself, or just share a thought that's come to your mind of what you've heard from people after they've used that framework, whether it be at a retreat or one of your
Yeah,
table.
definitely. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of like variations of bold moves that I have seen in such a short period of time. And a lot of them I think came, I started with consulting really as the base and then started doing the retreats. And the retreats really became a special place where we talked about the alignment of strategy, mindset and wellness, and using all of those as tools for our success, not just one, because I was very heavy on the strategy side
Mhm.
of how I operated, meaning in my role, but I really didn't think about mindset or wellness. Like it was, yeah, I'll take a vacation, and that was like the wellness piece. But I think examples can be relational. So like one that came to mind is just it doesn't always have to be like I need to change my role in my organization or I need to quit my job, because I don't advise that. I'm just saying that for me, that's what I had to do. But relational could be like this relationship is just not aligned with what I need in my life right now. Like I've evolved. I've kind of, come to be this person that I am now. And this relationship, whether it's a friend or a friend group or maybe a membership or even, a husband or, a partner, this isn't actually feeding me. And it's a very brave and bold move that takes courage to one, talk about it and see, can it be fixed or can it get realigned or reset? And if
Mhm.
it can't, what do we need to do? So I have seen that level of change with individuals, and it
Right.
certainly wasn't something that I had, intentioned, but it's certainly part of our wellness of how we actually operate in the world. Like if our relationships aren't solid and feeding us and supporting what we have as our goals and priorities, then it's not going to be one that we most likely can put energy toward or want to.
Mhm.
And so trying to fix it is something that I think people are like, well, can it be? And how do we do it? And seen people go through that. And I've seen also individuals kind of make the decision of, I don't think this is actually gonna to work. And that is a bold, bold, bold move to do something like that. And that is no social media post, most likely. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah. And I've definitely seen people leave their roles and become an entrepreneur. I've seen people switch roles within the organizations. Just talking even today, an incredible bold leader in our membership, just had a real challenge with someone in the organization she was in, and really stuck it out, but in a very productive and strategic way, and has been able now to move in the organization to another role. And that takes tactical
Mhm.
moves. It takes protection of your mindset and kind of your wellness, and was able to do it. And so like that's an example of kind of just knowing it takes time to I think is really important.
That's so cool. Okay, so tell us when your book's coming out, and I know this will probably run in January of 2025, so it'll probably already be out there.
Okay.
But
Yeah, it definitely be out. Yeah.
tell everybody how they can get it. How they
Yeah,
can.
so anywhere you buy books, I always encourage people to shop local at their local bookstore or go to bookshop.org or anywhere else that they buy books as well. And I think, just picking it up, I think the great thing about if you're picking up it in January, you'll be able to scan inside the book. There is a QR code for the workbook and be able to kind of get that. And it really takes you through all the activities within the book as well.
That's awesome. And tell the name of the book again.
It's Be Bold Today.
Be bold.
Unleash your potential, master your mindset, and achieve success.
I love it. Something that's come to me as I'm looking at your belief, own, learn, design is you have belief in your top strengths. You own, you have, that self assurance.
Mm-hmm.
Learn. Where's your learner?
My learner in the corporate world was number 3. My learner over here is 15.
Yeah.
So
So learner is in there. And when you tell me you had several degrees, and yeah, my
yeah,
mom went back to school at 80 and she had
nice.
a high, so you just never,
I'll
it's there.
probably still be
It's
getting my
there.
dissertation, finishing my dissertation when I'm 80. That's probably
Yes, you'll be fine. And then design, there's your ideation.
yeah,
So those
big
are
time.
all coming from your strengths, which give you energy. That's why it's working because
Yeah,
it's you. It's authentically you,
yeah,
and it's going to be classic because you created it.
yeah.
So,
It's really, really cool to see that, and to me, like, I didn't really even realize how much it had shifted, from those 2
yeah,
environments.
but it's kind of like this just is an awakening of some talents that now are coming out. So it's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
exciting.
letting them out of the box, so to speak.
Yeah, let them out of
Yeah.
the box. So, anything else that we didn't ask today that you want to make sure you share with the audience about bold, your just what you're doing, your journey, anything that is coming up for you that you want to make sure people know and take away from this today?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just if you're having that feeling of something's got to give, or I'd like to get curious about something, it doesn't have to be some huge step. It just needs to be the first step. And it could be writing it down, it could be journaling about it, it could be talking to a close friend and just kind of, I'm just going to put this out there. But I think when you tell someone, kind of your goal or what you're thinking, it starts to move things, whether you start to figure things out, whether it's something you'd like to explore or you end up maybe learning, oh, I really didn't like that.
Mhm.
Or, like you want to travel more and you don't have the money right now, which I could understand. And it's just something you want to do. But let's say you want to go to Italy. Well, take a cooking class, and learn how to make something or start to learn a language. Those are some bold moves of you just working towards something that you're not just going to shut it down because it comes up. So I think just being open to the curiosity of what's possible and then taking a step, one step toward it, I think will be really, really helpful.
What's one thing I heard you say, right then left, right then
Yeah.
left.
Yes, just the right, left, right, left. Like it is just keep moving forward towards it. Don't, like stay too much in action, meaning not active whether you're moving forward. I think there is an opportunity to dream, but I think dreaming takes also the intentional action of what you're going to do. You have to be part of the solution. It's not just going to happen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That is very wise. Great advice. Thank you so much for sharing your talents and sharing your journey. And we can't wait to hear how the book goes and the launch and then how many more people you're able to serve now. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.